This episode of the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast is brought to you by Loctite's Tight Foam. The best builders take weatherization seriously. When they need to seal a gap that's too small for insulation but big enough to create a draft, they reach for Loctite's Tight Foam. With 3 formulations for everything from small cracks to the biggest gaps, there's a tight foam product for every job, including a low expanding product designed to seal the rough opening around windows and doors. The high-density foam forms a tenacious bond to most common building materials, stays flexible to prevent cracking when materials move, and keeps air, moisture, and pests out of the house. Builders who care about energy efficiency, comfort, and durability choose Tight Foam. Visit LoctiteProducts.com for more information.
How do we change the perception of people out there that, this is really skilled labor. This is highly technical. What craftsmen, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, everybody does out there is super technical. That's why we call them. That's why we need them.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, a regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Dave Cooper, host of YouTube's Dave Cooper Live and a construction technology advocate. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. Dave, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me. I've been watching and listening and reading Fine Homebuilding for a long time.
Well, Colin Russell, my colleague, introduced us, and I'm grateful to him for that. To be truthful, I struggle to describe what you do for a living. Maybe you can do a better job than I did in the intro.
Yeah, for sure. So to really sum it up, we showcase the people, the products, and the processes that are building it better. In our industry, we like to, help educate and bring people together so we can be more collaborative and have a better understanding of not how only we're building in this country, but how we're building globally around the world. And what we're finding is that, we're missing that middle piece of education that's bringing our worlds together globally. And that's one of the things that we really love to focus on at Dave Cooper Live.
So how did you get into this work? Were you a builder in the conventional sector?
So I was, like a lot of kids, I grew up, stick framing with my uncle. And then I remember, in high school, the weekends in the winter, freezing my butt off, walking across, icy plates, saying to myself, man, I'm never doing this as I get older, never doing this as I get older. And, lo and behold, then I joined the Army and I'm like, oh, I'm never doing this anymore. I wish I was framing houses again. But yeah, so I've been in the industry since really I was young, except for a 10-year stint in the military. And I will tell you, I got into the offsite space because I was site building a house out in western New Jersey. And another person actually did a modular home right next to us. And within 4 to 5 months, his people already bought the house and were moving in. I was just finishing up sheetrock and wiring, and that's kind of how I ended up getting involved. So I started working with Ron. His name was Ron Seaschultz, and I started working with him for free on my own time just to learn what he's doing. And that's kind of when an aha moment went off for me, when I realized what he was doing was really no different than what I was doing on site. He was just using a different process, and I really grasped onto that and saw the future in it.
So folks who do site building sometimes criticize modular and panelized and other, can we say, factory models
Sure.
for being shoddy or having cheap finishes or whatever it is. What do you say to those people?
Yeah, I think we have the same people in the site build industry as well. It just really depends on what you're looking to build and who you're going to hire and who you're going to work with. So just like anything else that's out there, we need to really understand who the manufacturer is, who's actually, what kind of work that they do. And no different than a site builder, you're going out to choose a custom home builder. You have custom home builders that build at different levels than other custom home builders, depending on the market that they're in. So do your research is what I would say.
And by saying do your research, do you mean like go to a factory and see the modules or visit a site that's under construction?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. You know, the aha moment for a lot of people in this industry is exactly that when they go to a manufacturing facility and they see the precision that is being used in offsite construction. And it's no different than on-site construction in a lot of the factories. You know, you're just using a more controlled environment, using laser cut, drills and saws to get that precision. But the aha moment is really when you go there and once you understand what it's like living in one after you've already built one, or you speak to somebody that's been living in one and they start talking about the utility bills and the reduction of their overall expenses.
For decades now, I've been hearing that this is the way we're going to build. It hasn't exactly come to that place yet, but
Sure.
what's holding it back, and what are some of the ways that we could be building more efficiently, better buildings?
Yeah, so you know the way we're building, there's not necessarily anything wrong with how we've been building buildings all these years, right? You can easily point out projects across the country, around the world that have been standing for well over 100 years, but there is room for improvement. And in our industry, you know, we really have never advanced technologically. I mean, we have a better hammer. Maybe we're using carbon instead of wood or something like that, you know. But how do we bring new technology into an industry that hasn't really adopted it, you know, for so long? And I think there's a lot of room for us to start working together and using some of these best practices. You know, it's hard to argue the precision of offsite construction. Hard. But I also think that, you know, the way we've been building isn't working. We got an affordability problem across the country. We got supply issues across the country. We got housing problems across the country. So I think, you know, with this industry changing, you said, well, we've been hearing it for 50 years. So have I. I've been in this for 20 years. And I think the difference today is we are all facing the same problems as everybody else. Where's the labor? What are we going to do? We can't keep just letting people live on the streets, you know, the way it's going now. And I think bringing technology, bringing that new labor skill, you know, back into our industry is going to be what drives us forward.
So we were introduced by Colin, as I said earlier. I
Yeah,
know you guys were in Europe.
yeah.
Can you talk about some of the things you saw on your trip?
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole trip was about how do we build it better, right? How do we be more sustainable, higher efficiency homes? And I think, you know, we visited everything from modular manufacturing facilities. In fact, they were building McDonald's. All the McDonald's were going to be modular out of this manufacturing facility. And they were using a hybrid approach. And this was, I think, what a lot of people don't see. They were using concrete floors, and this is all off-site, steel columns, CLT, mass timber, doing it in a modular approach. So taking it to a whole nother level to meet the expectations on the commercial side of it. But then we also were visiting offsite, you know, site-built structures that were using offsite panelization technology. In other words, they were using, you know, we'd look at trusses, panelized wall systems here, but they were using some closed wall systems that I think were absolutely amazing. And it's funny, what we would consider a finished wall because they were using CLT, cross-laminated timber, and it's beautiful. That was just part of their structure, and then they were going to cover it. And on top of that, we were visiting also trade schools over there. And this is an area where I think we can all learn because in a trade school over there, you have to do an apprenticeship program and 4 years of training. And I'm talking on the job training's part of it, but 4 years of classroom training, everything from math, your regular college coursework that you would see, but super high end, really difficult designs and math that go into it. So when they come out, I would easily compare them to a master carpenter in this country just based on how it is. You just don't, over there, you don't call yourself a carpenter. You have to go through 4 years of school to become one, which is amazing.
Have you been to other places that are trying to solve the issues of affordability and quality construction?
Yeah, I mean, not only across the country, but here, you know, in the United States, sure. I mean, part of our road trip traveling, you know, showcased a lot of that. But, you know, Around the world, I mean, we have technology. The technology is not new for construction, right? You know, we're starting to see BIM, for instance, come more into what we
Can
do.
you can you briefly explain what that means to folks who may be unfamiliar?
For BIM, yeah. So your kids probably use it, right? Augmented reality, virtual reality. BIM basically is a program that's going to allow you see your structures, your home, for instance, as if you were walking through it. It gives you that virtual walkthrough, that virtual space. But the accuracy of it's so amazing. For instance, they've been using it in commercial construction. How do they build 100-story buildings, right? We find it so build to be, hard to build a single family building.
Right.
How do they do it? Well, they're using BIM, which allows you to do a lot of the workflow, the processes, the design up front. You can see where there's problems before those problems happen. And that's the value of technology today, BIM. That's the value what the gaming world's bringing to our world. And I think, site builders or offsite builders, once we start embracing this technology, it's going to resolve a lot of issues. It's going to help us build more sustainable homes, and it's going to actually help us build homes maybe even on time and on budget, which we all would like to see.
How? I can't even get my head around how that could be so helpful.
Well, let me give you an example of offsite construction, right? One of the things that happens in offsite construction is, you have to walk through the entire process up front. Color selections, products that you're using, what the wall dimensions are. You need to know where your MVPs are, your mechanical systems, your electrical systems. Where are all of those things going to be? Because we're building in sections when you're thinking of offsite. You cannot show up at a job site with a 1,000-square-foot house or a 10,000-square-foot house and go, it doesn't fit. Change order, right? As people like to say. So it's just thinking a little bit differently. And if we can think a little bit differently and get out of the old way of thinking, use technology to our advantage, such as a BIM program, such as a Revit program, right? Pretty similar in what they do, and use those for on-site construction or off-site construction, that's how we're going to get further faster. And do it in a way to where you're seeing problems before they even happen, which is the reason we have change orders, unless a customer asks for a change, and that happens quite a bit.
I think folks have a easier time getting their head around how this is useful for the design process. I guess the greater challenge for me is, how does it help you once you're actually building the house? It would seem once again useful to have the client, then put the headset on and walk through their framed house and be like, is this really what you want this to be like? But are there other ways too?
So let me understand your question a little bit. Is there other ways to get people to virtually understand their house without virtually being?
I guess I meant help build better houses or build them more
Yeah.
cost effectively,
Sure. So by using offsite manufacturing as an example, right? And I'll use the 2x4 or 2x6 approach. When you're building offsite, one of the things that happens is you're cutting each and every one of those pieces of lumber on site locally, right? Every cut's going to be a little bit different, whether it's a little hair of an off, millimeter off or not. With offsite manufacturing and using the efficiencies of technology, it is precision. Every one of those thousands of 2x4s, 2x6s, 2x10s are exactly the same length. All right, so what does that mean? When you start putting all this together and your house is perfectly square, perfectly level, right? You don't have gaps between plates and wall studs and things of that nature, right? Those are all air gaps. This is where the efficiency comes in for a homeowner. You have less squeaking, squealing, settling in the homes. So there's a lot of value, when we look at, all right, you can use technology, you can use BIM, but now if we can take all that stuff that we learned in that technology and we can build using more precision, that's where the end value comes in for the client. They save money. It's a healthier home. It's a more sustainable home. Imagine a job site without dumpsters. 30% of everything we spend or build goes in a dumpster.
It's alarming. Yeah, it is. It's a lot of garbage. When you get a window order, that's when it really hits home for me.
Right.
Between the cardboard and the styrofoam blocks and all the plastic, everything, all of it.
Yeah.
So somehow you convinced your family to go on a nationwide tour of innovative home building and projects. So it would seem to me they have a great interest in housing also.
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
I think, for housing, I've been in it, like I said, my entire life. With my wife and the children, we had twins right out of the bat in 2008. We got kids crawling on the floor all over the place. I think, and my wife also grew up in this industry with her dad building custom range hoods and so forth for high-end homes. But when COVID hit, we were already doing our show. We were already talking about, offsite construction and what we were doing. And my wife said to me, she said, "Now's the perfect time." I said, "The perfect time for what?" She goes, "We should sell the house and take this show on the road to really showcase innovation and what's going on." And I said, "What? Say it again. What are you talking about?" She goes, "Listen, it's a great time to teach our kids, right? We need to be more sustainable. We need to have healthier homes. We need to leave the world in a better place for the next generation." And that's kind of where the passion came with my wife. And then, of course, when your wife says, "Hey, let's sell the house and buy a motorhome," I think 24 hours later, I already had a deposit on a motorhome. I'm like, "All right, we're out of here." But
So many people did that, I would point out too,
yeah,
right?
they
It
did.
was, yeah.
They
Did you
really
see
did.
other folks on the road who had made a similar life change?
Everywhere. I mean,
Everywhere.
everywhere. Yeah. I mean, even for us finding a motorhome, I joke and say 24 hours later, but it took us months to actually find one, secure one, because they were in very high demand globally, if not just here. Yeah.
Was it enjoyable? I bet it was a little stressful with the whole family in tow. Can I guess that's the case?
No, you know what? It's kind of funny, right? You would think that. You would think, "Oh my God, five of you in a small 120 square foot, motorhome." But the reality is we were somewhere different every week, if not every 2 weeks. And just like in your houses, you spend most of your time in the living areas, downstairs or outside, not in your bedroom. So that was kind of us. I mean, we were doing our show on the road. We were outside all the time. Everywhere was somewhere new. So it was really the opposite happened. You were kind of forced to go enjoy where you were at, because
Cool.
every day was different.
Did the kids have an interest in the stuff that you were going to see and doing your show?
Okay, so there's two parts to that question, right? Work stuff, like going to another manufacturing facility, going to another job site, they enjoyed it. And then it kind of dwindled. Another factory, another job site. But the traveling part they loved. There was one project in Utah. It was called The House That She Built. Was a project that we covered, and it was all women from around the country that came together to build this beautiful home. And they wrote a book on it. They wrote a children's book on it. And I think that was the first time. I have twin daughters. My son's 6, so he's really not getting it yet. But the twin daughters, I think that was the first time on the entire trip where their eyes really lit up, because they were just surrounded by all these women. The plumber was from Pittsburgh. There you go. That flew out there to do the job. And I think that was probably the most inspiring thing for them, and just the way that they were treated when they showed up. And this house was in a subdivision with thousands of other homes being built. And it was the only job site that had nothing but female, women working on the job. It was amazing. The job site was so clean. It was, when you look at how they did everything, but awesome.
That's really cool. Uh, I don't know how to respond to that, except like, but you recently sold the RV. It was obviously time to come off the road. What was the motivating force behind that?
Yeah. Well, we did it for a year and a half, almost 2 years. The kids had to get back in regular school, back to sports. There was all that going on. So that was really the driving force. I could have honestly stayed on the road. I mean, there's so many great things happening in our country. If you watch the news, that's one thing. But if you actually get out there and go through all these towns and meet the people that are doing the hard work, you have a whole different view on what's really going on.
I wholly agree. So why should folks who already have a nice house and a community to live in worry about the affordability crisis and the pace of construction? As I understand it, even if we worked years and years at our current pace, we're not going to solve these issues. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that we're all addressing multiple problems, the way it is. And I think people that actually are already live in a home, already doing their things, we still have issues that are together and similar. Where's the waste going? Like, where's the waste going? Where's the labor to manage all of that waste? right? This is all of our problems to have to take a look at and deal with. And then, with the labor gap, growing bigger and bigger, where's the skilled labor coming in that's going to help take care of the infrastructure of all the homes? Where are you going to get plumbers when you need them and electricians when you need them? The cost of running homes is only getting worse. So whether we're building new construction or whether you're already living in something that's been built, it's gonna affect us, in different ways, both of us. But it's really the same problem that we're all solving for. How do we reduce the cost of what we're living in? How do we live in healthier homes? How do we leave the planet in a better place than we already found it? These are all things that we're all dealing with.
You mentioned where the workforce is going to come from. You mentioned the European model? I'm guessing it's Swiss, right? That you saw, or maybe Austrian.
It was Swiss. Yeah, it was Swiss for the last trip.
So, do you think that could work here? I mean, it's already hard enough to get students in technical programs that are part of their high schooling, right?
Yeah.
And then to ask them to wait another 4 years to start earning real money. Do you think they would be willing?
I think, to answer your question, no. I think the way our mentality is, that's not going to happen, right away. And I think we have to start meeting the youth where they are, right? And where are they? It sounds a whole heck of a lot more fun to play Fortnite and try and get paid for it, or play a video game, than be in New England walking plates in the middle of winter framing a house, right? When you use that mentality. And I think part of it is to win our labor force back is really twofold. It's one is, how do you meet them where they're at? How do you use cool technology? How do you make construction cool again? That's one thing, because I think there's a perception in our industry, just like there is with, with manufactured housing and modular housing, right? There's people don't know the difference in the skill levels that it takes for either one of those to happen. But I think if we can start using technology that already exists and bring it into our industry to help us be more efficient and build better and build healthier, we're going to start seeing more of the youth come back in. And then how do we change the perception of people out there that, this is really skilled labor. This is highly technical. What craftsmen, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, everybody does out there is super technical. That's why we call them. That's why we need them. How do we change the value of what that is? Like, hey, I'm a doctor. All right. Well, hey, I'm a carpenter. And I think that's the other side of this. But is it going to change overnight? No. I think we're in for a long run on this. I think technology is going to help. I think offsite manufacturing is here to stay. It's growing tenfold right now, with thousands of manufacturing facilities popping up in this country alone right now. But I do think that we need to change kind of how we go about getting the young kids back in our school and making it cool again for them. Mike Rowe does a good job of stuff like this, right? Dirty jobs guy.
But the work is laudable, but it's really hard. There are a lot of things a lot of challenges to it. And I think you'd agree it's still tough on your body. And, I think that's something we have to address also.
Yeah, I definitely agree. But that's the value. If you look at offsite construction as well, it reduces that. It allows the workforce to work longer, right? Look, a simple example would be exoskeleton suits, if I can say that right, where, a worker can wear one of these suits and it helps them lift and move without straining their body so much. Offsite construction is the same way. And with offsite construction, no matter the form, panelized, modular, CLT, it allows people who otherwise wouldn't be able to do that physical labor work to come in and do that physical labor work. And that's some of the value too. So we make our workforce a lot bigger and a lot broader. Now we're opening it up to men, women, anybody that wants to do the job.
So what are you hoping to accomplish with your show and your evangelizing, shall we say?
Yeah. So we just want to bring awareness to an awesome industry that we're already in. Right? We want people to really understand what are the opportunities out there for us to be better. How can we build it better? And what are the ideas that are happening around the world that allow us to collaborate and say, hey, that's a good idea. I should think about doing that, where we are. So, for us, I really think, showcasing the awareness, showcasing the technology that's out there, And the biggest thing is this industry is so amazing. When you ask people for help, they help you. Imagine if we all had a way to communicate and collaborate, because we all feel like we're out there on an island by ourselves. Every builder out there feels that way, right? But there's opportunity for us to learn and bring awareness and talk about all of these different opportunities. And offsite construction is not going to solve the world. We're still going to be site building. We're still going to have the custom home builders. But I believe there's ways to bring both of those worlds together. And that's one of the things that we're really focused on.
What advice would you give someone who wanted to learn more about, ways to build better houses or build them more efficiently using either offsite or other new technologies that they're not using presently?
Yeah, well, I mean, one, you could start off by, just watching our 700 interviews that we did. I think, over the last couple of years, because that's really what we do is try and educate on what's happening out there. And then people can make their own decisions on what works for them and what doesn't. But if you're looking to really change how you build and you want to be more efficient and you want to do more with less, because that's what we're all having to do these days because the labor force isn't there, then just, YouTube's a great place to do it. You can check out any of the YouTube programs that are out there. But also, there's so many people, even in your association, the NAHB, that are talking about this now. Where does it go? How does it impact the future? And how do you do what's right for you and your business is the big thing.
So, somewhat off the subject, I was delighted to learn you're born and raised Pittsburgher is how you described yourself. Where did you go to school? And then I'm going to ask you about your own house that you recently moved back.
Yeah. So, School of Hard Knocks. I straight out of high school, I went into the military, and I stayed there for 10 years. So, and that was right at the beginning of Desert Storm. So I had the joy of that. But yeah, most of my education came from the military, and then I went to nights and weekends in school while I was in the military to just get a liberal arts degree. And when I got out of the military, that's when I started getting back into home building and that in New England, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, that area. So
is that a family business? Did you know what you were doing?
Heck no, I didn't know what I was doing. Oh,
that's the answer I would expect from most people who are on the show, which is so funny, right? But it's true. Yeah.
My grandfather always said, an education costs money. You can go to college or go to school, you're going to pay for it, or you can go out there and try and figure it out on your own. Either way, you're paying for it. But I grew up framing houses, been around it most of my life, other than my military tenure. But when I got out, I started flipping homes again, and then I started building and buying lots and that sort of thing. And it's always a learning experience, especially in the modular world. I started off in the modular world, then panelized and CLT and so forth. But, it takes time. And I would say for anybody that wants to look at the industry of offsite, no matter what form it is, you're not going to get it on the first time. It's going to cost you money if you're just going out there and you think you're going to build a modular home or a panelized home. It's going to cost you more up front. But once you do it the third and the fourth time and you figure out the process and the efficiencies behind it, that's when the time saving comes in. No different than when you hire a new carpenter and you're trying to get them up to speed.
Sure. So you were gone from Pittsburgh for a while, and then you did some home building, and then what brought you back to the city?
Yeah, so this is the first time we've ever lived around family. So family kind of brought us back to Pittsburgh, since I left the military. So when we went on our journey, that was one of the things the kids really wanted, was to be close to, grandparents and my sisters and brothers and so forth. That was the driving force to coming back to Pittsburgh. And as they say, all roads always lead back to Pittsburgh. Once you leave, you always come home, as they say.
Well, I think I told you, decades later, I still tell people I'm from Pittsburgh, which is not exactly true, but, it leaves a mark, let's just say.
Right.
So you bought a house. Pittsburgh used to be really noted as a very affordable city. I think you'd agree. And I think you and I are probably pretty close in age to realize, at what point it was very affordable.
Yeah.
What did you find when you were looking for houses this time?
Yeah, so we ended up actually renting a place because I haven't lived here for so many years. And growing up, in fact, where we're living right now used to be all farmland. I wasn't really sure where we wanted to live in Pittsburgh. I always thought New England was expensive, but I have to tell you, when coming back to Pittsburgh, I had a false sense of hope that it was going to be less expensive, and it really has not been the case. Eating, drinking, things like that are less, but the housing market is insane here. In fact, even during the recession of '08, it still went up. It didn't even drop like most places. So, um,
Do you
it's
think that's
grown.
because of the technology industry that has made its home in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, so one of the things when you look at the Rust Belt cities, Pittsburgh being one of them, back when the steel mills and coal mines and all that kind of closed down, they reinvented themselves and they went straight down straight to the technology route. Google and a lot of the other big tech companies have moved in here, and I think their timing was just spot on for that growth part of it happening versus other cities that are out there.
I bet folks who have been there a long time remark on what stuff costs. Am I right?
They do. Well, I mean, if you were to talk to my parents and so forth, oh yeah, it's not the same. But also growing up in their days, if you came here from Cleveland to watch a Steeler game, they used to hang you over the railing by your ankle. My dad would say, "You're not doing that anymore either." But and vice versa. But yeah, of course, I think it's like anything else. People don't like change, and that's a good probably topic for the conversation. It's change is hard when you don't understand where you need to get to sometimes. And we were very lucky that in our city that we grew up with, kind of had a better vision than I think what I had or even my folks had when this was all happening. So I always say it's always good when there's smarter people than me out there.
So you rented this place for a while, and then you probably had trouble finding a house that you paid a lot of money for. What was that like?
Yeah. So, well, we're still renting this place because we just literally
Mm.
we're in this space I'm in right now for probably about 4 weeks. So we just moved back, and we are starting to look right now what we're going to do. Our ultimate goal would be to find a piece of land and build our own home, living and breathing the technology that we've seen around the world. And for us, net zero is a real goal. To have a house that we've been in so many houses across the country, no utility bills whatsoever, not even a sewer and water bill. Now, zoning and where you live plays a part in some of that, but there's some really great opportunities to do things, and it doesn't take a lot of money to do it. It's techniques that get it done.
So is your rental property driving you crazy with improvements that could be made?
Oh, you have no idea. You have no idea. Here's so the hard one of the hardest things even with Switzerland, right? When you go and you see their construction compared to what we do here, it makes it hard to come home and say, what are we doing? Because it's advanced. And it's still they're still using solid beams for their wood floor systems. They just think a little bit differently, and it's kind of like that 100 years ago mentality with the wood. A 2x4 was 2 inches by 4 inches, right? Not 1 3/4. The deal. So that's the difference in it. But yes, to answer your question. If I don't get the opportunity to actually build my own home, I'm probably gonna go crazy in my mind for the rest of my life.
It's been a pleasure talking to you, Dave. Is there anything you'd like to tell or ask our audience before we go?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is with offsite construction. I would challenge anybody out there to kind of look around in the neighborhoods you're going. Can you really tell what was built offsite and what wasn't? I mean, yes, there's some of the older stuff that's out there, but even if you look back, most people can't tell the difference between a Sears modular, panelized modular home that happened back in the 40s and 50s.
Now it's
today.
very desirable. I think you'd agree.
Now it is more desirable. So
Yeah.
I think just look around and see if you can really tell a difference. And I think, really understand and take the time to think about the process in which we build today and how we can improve on it. We still need the labor. We still need these skilled craftsmen out there. But I think we can all benefit and work together. And again, how do we do more with less? Because that's where we're at.
So finally, Dave, how do folks learn more about what you're doing?
Yep. The best way is we have a growing YouTube channel. It hasn't always been our place to be, but youtube.com/Dave Cooper Live is probably the best place to watch what we've done. We got about 700 videos from, in the last 2.5, 3 years that we've done, a lot of them on location and around the world, or you can, find us on LinkedIn at Dave Cooper Live.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Dave. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. Thanks to Dave Cooper for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com, and please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. Thanks, everybody. Keep craft alive. Stay safe. Thanks, Dave. That was awesome.
Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate you.